Alright everyone, I'm back to on the porch time. Finished part 2 of some of my story. Had some questions asked about my sister. My sister's fine. She's in the accident she received some serious concussions and she tore her ACL. I basically took the blow for her body when we hit that hill. She is a breast cancer survivor. She's in the Philippines at this moment. She's a missionary, which is a good thing. What I want to do is I want to take some time. I want to back up a little bit because there was so much going on in my life at the time that I could not. I got a neighbor in the background shooting, so you just have to look over that. If I'd have said everything that was going on in my life, it would have been so jumbled up that it would have been hard to really understood it. So what I'm going to do is back up till I was about 15 years old. When I was 15 years old, I went to a Baptist church with my whole family. And one of my buddies from school had invited me to come to church with him, and I did. Really enjoyed the congregation. The pastor and his family was really nice people. And it kind of was a little bit of a problem in my family for a little while because I was going to one church and they was going to another church. But it wasn't long till my brothers and sisters decided to follow me because of the youth programs and all that was going on there. And wasn't long till my mom and dad eventually came over and started going to church there, and we all liked it a lot. But just like all other churches, you know, there was a few problems, which is all churches have them. If you find one that don't have them, don't go because you'll mess them up. But we decided to start a new church. My parents and the pastor decided to start a new church, and that was quite an experience for us because we had church in our home for probably a year. We met in my mom and dad's house. That was something that I really wasn't used to. It was kind of strange for us. But we would go on to build the church. We rented a house in town after a year, a building, not a house. And had church there, and the church began to grow. Well, during that time, I had the accident, and I had gotten over the accident while going to church there. The pastor and his family was really good to me during that time in my family. And I began dating the pastor's daughter, and we ended up getting married. And later on, her father owned a nice big piece of property in another county away from where we lived at. And for her inheritance, he went ahead and gave her inheritance, which was 10 acres of land. And we moved from where I lived at in Wiggins on my family's place over to this other county where they lived at, and started us a small farm there. We lived in a house trailer for quite a few years, and I decided that I wanted me a wood framed house, so I went in debt to have a house built on the property. I had them just frame it up and black it in. I basically went in and did all the rest of it. I built me a nice big barn. We had pecan orchards and on the property, and we did a lot of farming. It's my first homestead. I was so excited about this homestead. Well, after I stayed there about 10 years building this homestead, and I realized after being there 10 years that I was going to be another 20 years, or another 25 years actually, in debt to paying this house note. And that was just something that I just didn't want to do. And plus, I wanted to upgrade my farm. So she and I had 2 beautiful daughters while we were there on that particular homestead. It was a long way from church. We were having to travel quite a distance to church every Sunday and Wednesday. So I decided to move back closer to the church during that time. There's a part of that I'm going to back up and mention, that when we started this church, and the church finally bought a piece of property after we had met in this building in town for a couple of years there. we bought some property, and my family and the church decided that we was going to build a new building. I spent every moment that I had available in my life out there working on this building for 4 years. And during that 4 years of time working on that building, helping get it up and get it blacked in to get it completed, I learned that I had really made a mistake. The first 4 years of my marriage, I should have been spending some time getting to know the woman that I was married to. I got so involved in religion and working for the Lord, and I'm not saying that it's wrong to work for the Lord. When you indulge so much time into it that you forget your family, then it becomes wrong. And that's basically what I did. And when we bought the homestead that was closer to the church, I spent I still did a lot of things at the church there, even though it was many years later. It was 10 years later. I was still going back and forth to church, doing stuff a lot. Wasn't really devoting as much time to my family as I should have been. And in that process, I made a lot of mistakes that I regret to this day. But I bought a homestead, another piece of property not far from the church, and I built my own home at that time. I was in the logging business, as I told y'all. Well, I hadn't told you that part yet. I mean to back up. When the military turned me down because of the injuries that I had, I had to make a living. And my dad at that time ran a logging company, so I went to work for him. I really didn't want to, because I had went to college in the 11th grade in high school. I went a year of college in the 11th grade to be a mechanic, and that was one of the reasons that the military really wanted me at that time, was my mechanical ability. When I realized that I wasn't going to be going into the military and had to have a way to make a living, I tried mechanicking for a year at a dealership in the 12th grade. I worked in the evening times at this dealership because I only had to go to school half a day. I had all my credits. I realized that I just wasn't going to make the kind of money that I could make working for my father. So I quit that job, went to work for him, logging. And over the next 15 years of logging, I received several injuries to my body. I got hit by a tree a couple of times, got my ankles broke. I had a tree hit me in the chest and broke my ribs all up in my chest. And was down for quite some time. I messed my back up at one time. I was off work almost a year from messing my back up. So for 15 years of my life, I probably should have been doing something else besides logging, because that kept the woman that I was married to, that kept her on pins and needles, never knowing if I was going to live or die out there working in the woods, because it was so dangerous. And that played a part in our marriage, a big part in it. But I was able to, because I was in the logging business, I was able to get the material to build my home on this new homestead that we had purchased, and build it without having to borrow money. And I built a nice 2-story home, paid cash for it. I was able to clear my land because we had a lot of equipment. I was able to fence my land. I raised pigs, chickens, goats, cattle, and was living the dream that I wanted to live. And after being there another 10 years, I would undergo a lot of changes in my life. There would be some problems in the church where I went, and I would leave that church and go to another church. And while at that other church, the Lord really got a hold to me, and at that time I believed that I was called into the ministry to be a minister. I surrendered to the ministry. I was licensed and ordained at that time. Went around, I preached at a lot of different churches. But some events would happen down the road that would cause me to have to stop that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because that's just some things that may be just too personal to be mentioning. But then later on, after 10 years, I would go through a divorce that was really, I'm not going to say it was her fault, because I made a lot of mistakes during that time. And because we didn't spend a lot of time together doing the things that husbands and wives should have done, we grew apart. And I felt like it was best that we just separate and go our different ways. After going through the divorce, I learned, once again, it's one of them things, I learned a lot more valuable lessons in my life about how a person can make a lot of mistakes. You can think you're doing the right thing and actually not be doing the right thing. You can get so busy for God that you forget about God, and it becomes about you. And when that happens, you're of no use to God or mankind, really. And that's basically what I did. After going through the divorce, because of my religious beliefs, I didn't feel like I would not be able to be a pastor or anything again. So I gave up the ministry, and I did do a lot of Sunday school teaching afterwards because I believed that I could still teach. And I did quite a bit of teaching. Then I would leave that homestead because rather than drag my kids through a nasty divorce, I just gave up everything and pretty much walked away to save my children the embarrassment of having to go through something like that. And plus, I was 40 years old and in the construction business, so I kind of felt like that I could just build me another house. And that's what I did. I owned quite a bit of, not quite a bit of land. I owned almost 30 acres at that time, and I moved on another piece of my property, built me a new home. I remarried quite quickly right afterwards. I found a young lady that I felt like was what God had for my life at that time. We married and we built the home that you see in my videos now, which is a country Victorian home. I've tried to put it up for sale a couple of times because I really felt like that I needed to move away from here. But I put it up for sale two different times, and God just blocked it both times. I moved to central Mississippi for almost a year one time. Tried to live up there. It just didn't work out. God brought me back here to the house because it didn't sell. And then, after being married to Debbie for 4 years, she developed breast cancer. And when she developed the breast cancer, they only gave her 20 months to live. So she did the chemotherapy thing. That's all we knew. I mean, at the time, we didn't know anything about cancer. We just had no clue, so we just did whatever the doctor said. She went through all the chemo and the radiation, and they told us about, I think it was like 8 months later, that she was cancer-free after telling her that she didn't have it 20 months to live. But then they'd come back a month later and say that they'd seen a scan and said the cancer was somewhere else in her body, and we had to go back through the whole rigmarole again. But this time around, I told her, I said, there's got to be more to it than this. And as I began to do a lot of research into cancer, I've probably done, 5,000 hours worth of research into cancer. And I just devoted my whole life to it at that time because I wanted answers. And what I really discovered was that cancer was a disease of the immune system. So I began to treat the immune system myself. And in doing so, we began to eat organic foods. We began to predominantly cut out sugar because cancer fed on sugar. I realized that after a while. And to get her body oxygenated, because cancer cannot live in an oxygenated environment. And in doing that, her cancer went away. The doctors were astounded. They told us, they said, I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it. And so we did, and for the next several years she was cancer free. But there come a point when she wanted to take care of her mother, and I took her back to the oncologist to get his opinion on this, and he had told her at that time definitely no, because the stress of taking care of someone that was in the condition her mom was would be too much for her. There's a good possibility her cancer would come back. But being as it was her mother, she decided that's what she wanted to do, and we would bring her mother to our house here and care for her for a year, because her mother passed away after 1 year of being here. And a couple of months after her mother passed away, she came back down with cancer again, and this time it was full blown, and they basically, no matter what we did, it didn't do any good. The way I had to look at it is, it was just God's timing. It's what God wanted at that time, and He took her home. And I'm probably going to stop here and pick it up on another part, because I feel like that would be the best place to stop it at right now. If you like what you've heard today, just be sure to like, share, and subscribe from Deep South Homestead. Thank you.